Good evening all, and welcome. Tonight we learn that the delivery drivers of the world sometimes have absolutely horrifying experiences to deal with, and some more interesting ones. I hope you enjoy tonight's fresh stories. So get ready and let the darkness take control. I deliver pizza, and I'd been having a really busy night, non-stop back and forth without any time to even pause or take a leak. I'd been so busy that I wasn't even thinking about bathroom breaks, but we're also going through a bit of a heat wave in our area, so I'd been drinking copious amounts of water. All of a sudden, as I was driving to this particular delivery, the urge to go hit me, like it went from 0 to 60 in an instant. Thankfully, I was close to the customer, so I could get this one over with quickly, or so I thought. I pulled up to the house and it was in an area I'd delivered to before, so I could immediately see that something wasn't right. All the lights were off in the house, not even the glow of a television or anything. It was extra apparent because the street light closest to the door happened to be out of order, and on top of it all, the block was dead quiet. This is a big university area, and obviously there aren't many student renters in July, but there had to be at least one person because someone ordered a pizza. Maybe they just liked sitting in the dark, or they were out back in the yard. Whatever, I just didn't want to get out my car and knock on a quiet house in the middle of nowhere at 9:30 without first checking that I had the correct address and the customer was inside. It was scorching that night, even at sundown, and my car's AC is a joke, and the piping hot pizzas don't really help as such. So I have to try and open the car door as infrequently as possible to keep in any cool air. I called the number the customer provided and the voice on the other side said, "Yeah." I just tried to keep it concise. "Hey, it's your pizza out front. There doesn't appear to be anyone home." The customer replied, still gasping for air, "Yeah, I'm not home." I had to be so badly by that point that I was much less patient than I'd otherwise been with a customer right out the gate. "Well, then you're going to have to terminate the order because I've arrived in the stated delivery window and you were supposed to pay in cash, so I don't know what to tell you. Plan ahead next time." I instantly regretted letting my bladder do the talking for me, as the voice on the other end came through more clearly as a young, bubbly, and very distraught girl who couldn't have been older than 20 or 25. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was running down the street and I could barely hear you. I just switched you out of my AirPods. Is that better?" "Sorry, I completely lost track of time at work, but I knew you were coming and that's why I'm literally running home right now. Please don't leave. I'm starving and I don't have a car. Seriously, please, 5 minutes, okay?" I know what it's like to be hungry and running late, and have no car, and not living near any restaurants. Plus, when I heard her voice, I began to remember more specifically having delivered to this place a few times before, and she'd always been perfectly nice. Now I felt bad for snapping. I tried to walk it back, while simultaneously look out my window for potential spots to pee. No, it's my bad. I'm letting the heat get to me. That's all. It's not your fault. No need to rush. I'll just see you when I get here." I hung up, and while surveying the streets, I started to think I was really out of luck. All the other houses had people in them, and they were close together. So were the clumps of trees or out-of-the-way patches of land or anything. Of course, I had just tossed my empty water bottle at the last delivery, because I'm an idiot. Finally, I decided it was an escalation to the point of an emergency, and the safest bet was to use a bush, the one in front of the woman's house. She wasn't home, the streetlight was out and no one would see me. The people who were home were inside, and my car was parked across the street. And we're a small shop that don't wear uniform, and if someone did see me, they'd have no way to connect me to my employer. Animals pee outside all the times, humans are animals. This is fine. I scurried over to the tallest bush. She didn't really have much of a yard, it was just more of a walkway lined with bushes and flowers that ran adjacent to her front door. The biggest cluster of bushes, the only one where I could be sure of that there would be no visible splatter on the side of a house, was about 4 feet from her door. I looked both ways, unzipped and let it fly. After the initial millisecond of relief, I noticed the sound was way off, more like pissing on something solid than something leafy. I started panicking, thinking I'd aimed wrong, but once I started I couldn't stop midstream. So I kept squinting in the darkness to see if maybe I was hitting a key rock or something and could just move a few inches over. Instead, all of a sudden I heard a way more concerning noise. What the hell? And before I could turn around, assuming to be caught by a neighbor, a man came leaping out of the bushes. He blew by me, brushing my golden shower off him as he did. He spit pretty much emphatically on the ground, so I think I might have beamed him right in the face. I didn't see where he went after a few paces, though this next part is kind of a blur. I do think I remember hearing a car screeching out a bit further away after a minute. I'd gotten some night vision by that point, so I was able to make out his height, build and outfit, but only the most general details of each. I was in such shock that I didn't even put my thing away. I just stood there trying to figure out what had happened. The reality was so terrifying that in my mind, I refused to accept it and impulsively searched for a reasonable explanation that could make everything okay. Could these bushes lead to some backyard area that just looked like they were against the house? Could they have been obscuring an open window? My inner voice was desperately screaming, "Brah, that man was in a hoodie. In 90-degree weather. That was a bad man, you're in a bad situation." But the very idea that I was within inches of a guy who would be hiding in a bush at all, let alone in front of a young woman's house at night, just wasn't something I was ready to grapple with yet. I was coping by not coping. My fight or flight response totally failed me at that point because my dumb ass did the absolute last thing I should have done. I approached the bushes and tried to validate. There must be a good reason this man in a hoodie must be behind these bushes in the middle of the night theory. So I walked over to the side, turned on my phone flashlight and tried to peer around the line of shrubbery. Pro tip: as scary as things may be in the dark, seeing them with a single beam of your flashlight can sometimes make it worse. That's when I saw the bag. There was a tattered drawstring bag sitting behind the bushes, slightly splashed with pee, but I was in such a moronic daze from shock that I groped around for it, thinking, see, this is it, this'll explain why he was back here. I examined it. Once I maneuvered it over and pulled it open, I saw a sharp knife, a roll of duct tape and a bottle of pills. The delusion officially broke at that point, and all the adrenaline, endorphins and self-preservation instincts that had been suppressed kicked in 10 times over. I became whatever the opposite of dazed is, more laser-focused than I have ever been in my entire life, with one singular goal: get back to my car. I dropped the bag, booked it across the street, got in my car and slammed on the pedal before the door was all the way closed. I went as fast as I could until I hit a red sign, then I pulled over to the side and realized I couldn't be driving in the condition I was in. I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour drugstore and took a deep breath. I was finally calm and coherent enough to zip up and formulate a plan of action. Who do I call first, the police or the girl whose house that was? I thought about it, for what couldn't have been more than 10 seconds. Okay, I'm in a locked car with my engine running. If trouble starts, I can drive away. I know something is up. She might not. She needs to know not to keep walking in that direction. But as I was dialing her number, it occurred to me, what if there was no girl? I thought I remembered delivering to that house before, but what if I was wrong? What if the girl on the phone was just a decoy to get me there to rob me, or worse? Every pizza guy on the planet has seen the Evil Genius documentary by now. So I thought, she called me all out of breath. She wasn't home. The whole thing was off. I can't risk it. I'll call the cops. I called 911. The operator was very helpful in calming me down because I was a complete wreck at this point. He kept assuring me that someone would be there soon. I kept telling them they had to be there before the girl did, but I was trying to express 3 thoughts at once and really damaging my own credibility. It came out more as, you've got to save this girl because he wasn't after me, I was just delivering a pizza. Unless they were after me, in which case there might not be a girl. But I talked to one on the phone, so then you should find the girl because they used her to lure me there. But if she's real, she doesn't know about the guy who is also real, and there could be more guys if there actually is a girl. And you know what? Even if there isn't a girl, there might not be more guys. I only checked part of the bushes, so I don't actually know. But, well, we will know the guy is the one I saw because I peed all over him. You know, I didn't mean to. This was back when I thought the girl was real, but not home. But she might be real. So, you know, yeah. Please find her. Finally, they basically asked me to stop talking and stay on the line. But that was when I saw an incoming call from the customer. I couldn't answer it without disrupting my 911 call, so I ignored it. But then she sent me a text like, "Hey, I'm here, I don't see you." I told 911 she was there, and they said the officers were only minutes away, but who knows how long that meant, especially after I'd given such a scattered amount of information about the events in my panic. I just felt overwhelmed with guilt, but my rational mind said the odds of her being a decoy girl for some large scam targeting pizza guys were low, and the odds of her being the intended victim of a predator were high. So I put my 911 call on mute, where I can hear them but they can't hear me, and turned back, heart absolutely pounding out of my chest, compulsively muttering, shit, the entire way. Then I took 911 off mute, told them I had returned to look for the girl, and they weren't happy about that, but I saw her meandering past the parked cars in the street looking to see if one were mine, and I waved her down, flashing my brights. She bounced over to the window of my car, all happy-go-lucky, and I figured that was a good sign she wasn't in on it or whatever. But I was just so scared to be back in the general area and to not know what had just happened or what was gonna happen. I kept whispering, get in, and she was like, "Get in, huh? Oh, you want me to get the pizza from the back?" I didn't want to make the same mistake with her that I had made with 911. So instead of telling her the whole story, I stuck to the bare facts. "There was a man in your bushes. I'm on the phone with the police. I don't know where he is right now. Please get in the car and lock the doors." I was barely able to get the whole sentence out, and I was shaking like I had just downed 10 cups of black coffee. I held up my phone with 911 on the call screen to verify it for her. I thought that was why she got in the car with no further explanation. But it turns out that it wasn't entirely it. "You're still here? Is she with you? Are you safe? Is anyone there?" 911 kept checking in, not knowing who the third party was I was talking to. I reassured them, and we drove more cautiously this time to a location 911 instructed us to wait at to speak with a police officer as they cleared the area. I didn't actually have to do much after that. The police came pretty soon after a police car met us, and I gave a statement telling them everything I observed. And she went to go speak with more officers in detail than they needed me for. It turns out the reason she got right into the strange pizza guy's car without probing any deeper into my story was because she knew who the man was right away from the description. She had an abusive ex-boyfriend who was apparently psychotic enough that he immediately came to mind from hearing, "There's a guy in your bushes." She later called us to thank me and insisting on leaving a huge tip. I wasn't there when the call came in, so the kid who answered it didn't know to refuse to accept the money, but the manager already promised the next time we see her, we can load her up with enough 1 free pie cards to last a lifetime. Easily the scariest thing that has ever happened to me on the job or off. I didn't get the chance to tell the story much because I try avoid sharing it with anyone who could possibly know the girl or know of the event. But I'm still not the same since. Even though I know he didn't have anything to do with me directly, this truly shook me to my core. So man in the bushes, let's not meet again. On my first summer back home from freshman year of college, I picked up a part-time job delivering pizzas in a town around 30 minutes away from where I lived. The area is rural Georgia and is known for having places that are in the middle of nowhere. And the pizza place's whole shtick was that it delivered to even the most remote areas imaginable within the town limits. I could fill books with the weird experiences that summer, from the calls that came from long-abandoned warehouses to the dog that got excited about the pizza in my hand and accidentally shredded my pants with her claws. but one will always stand out in my mind as the creepiest. It was getting fairly late, 10:30ish, so I was confident at the time that I would be sent on no further calls before closing at 11. However, someone barely managed to miss the cutoff time and our clerk accepted their order since they were so close, and I was given the address and a single box of hot dough and sent on my merry little way. The first red flag was the driveway, or rather the lack thereof. There was a mailbox, but no actual driveway, not even gravel. It was just grass and a barely distinguishable trodden pathway that resembled more of a service trail than it did something frequently used. I bumped along, wondering if I was even en route to the place, when I saw a slightly above average sized house looming over the horizon, horribly dilapidated and completely surrounded by overgrown woods. I estimated that the rest of the driveway led and ended up parking up in a grassy patch that could have been the walkway, just as easily as it could have been the front yard. Headlights aimed towards the porch as per company policy. I walked up to the door, but I believe that calling it a door is generous. It was a door frame all right, but the door itself was a large slab of wood propped haphazardly against the side of the house, barely covering the entrance. This was red flag number 2. The third and fourth were also around the door. This included an A4 sheet of printed paper with just the words "around back" scribbled in all caps, which was hanging just below the place where someone had self-engraved the door with the title of Mason Family Ranch. Typically, I would never go around the back of a house, especially a shady unlit house, and especially at night. However, it was my last drop of the day and I was ready to get it over with and be on my way home. Against my better judgment, I trapezed around the back of the house. The door back here was an actual door, but it was covered in both cobwebs and fresh spider webs. Clearly, this was a door that had not been used in some time. I found the cleanest area available and knocked, counted to 45 and knocked again. There were no lights on in the house and I could hear no movement. I knocked and counted again, and repeated the sequence 3 times, and I was finally creeped out enough to return to my car. As I turned, I finally heard a voice coming from inside the house, clearly agitated, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. I tried to knock once more, and as I was counting, I heard something in the wood behind me. It started out as just movement deep in the trees, but soon enough I could make out distinct footsteps coming directly towards me through the brush. As I'm standing there coming to terms with my impending demise, I follow the direction of the noise to the edge of the woods, which is around 15 feet away from me. In the moonlight, I can clearly see the woman who stepped out. She was relatively old, maybe in her 60s, with long blonde grey hair, which tangled and matted and hung down past her hips. She was in what looked like a nightgown originally, but at the time it was dingy and close to a beige-brownish colour. She was barefoot, and her feet were covered in what appeared to be dirt and blood, due to the fact that she had just sprinted through the prickly wood where there was no trail to be seen. I never learnt her name, but I still affectionately refer to her as red flag number 5. She stopped short of when she saw me and started to shake her head. No, eyes wide. I stood there like a terrified deer in the most messed up headlight situation ever, and she took a few more steps towards me, reaching out to me finger pointed. Her voice came out way stronger than mine would at the time when she spoke. You know how southern people can either sound like loving grandmas or backwoods murderers? Well, she sounded like the latter when she drawled, "Oh, no. No, honey. You get on. You get out of here." I wish I could say I listened. I ran, I left, but I was so in shock at how the events were playing out that my own self-preservation was put on the back burner while I tried to figure out what just in the Kentucky Fried Chicken was happening. She seemed to realize that I was not moving. Even if I could, my mouth wasn't moving to ask her what was happening, or even what to do with the pizza in my hand. She looked at me like she could have smacked the hell out of me right then and there and proceeded to deliver red flag number 6 through 12. "Darling, did you hear me? Or are you deaf or dumb? Young girls like you come out here and then they don't get to leave. So I finally quit being the scaredy cat in a horror movie when I realized that this was not funny. I was about 5'3", 116 pounds, and potentially being targeted, so I dropped the pizza, which had serious serial killer toppings by the way, and started running back to my car, which I had stupidly left on and unlocked, as was usual for most of my deliveries. As I neared the car, I heard a slam from behind me and I looked over my shoulder to see the wooden door had just been pushed over and fallen onto the porch beneath it. As I was closing the car door, an older man was limping to the front steps, waving his arms like an airplane runway attendant and calling me all sorts of names, telling me to get out the car now. At a loss for what to do, I called out something muttery and shakily along the lines of, "Pizza's out back," and floored my dad's little 90s Lexus and somehow managed to avoid trees on the odd trail back to the main road, which was still 12 miles and several turns from any road that actually had a name, let alone printed lines. I reported it to my manager and he said he'd contact the police, but nothing ever came of it, that I'm aware of. Either way, that was the first time and hopefully last personal encounter I have with the self-proclaimed Manson family ranch. When I was in college, I delivered pizzas, and once stopped at a delivery and noticed that the neighbor's house was about to be on fire. I say about because the fence attached to the house was in flames, and it was up against the house, and the flames were licking the eaves. I ran up to the front door, rang the doorbell, knocked and yelled, but nothing. I called the fire department, then ran into the house next door, pulled off their hose and ran to the other side of the house on fire, attached it and started spraying. I had almost most of it out when the fire department arrived and they finished the job. As they were spraying it down, a 20-year-old girl comes out the house with her 13 and 14-year-old girl. Apparently, the 20-year-old one was babysitting the younger ones and was scared to open the door. Earlier that night, the two younger girls had broken up with their boyfriends and with the babysitter's help, set fire to pictures of their ex-boyfriends and threw them in the trash can outside. The trash can just happened to be up against the wooden fence that was up against the house. I delivered the pizza next door and went on with my shift. A week later, their parents stopped by the store looking for me and gave me a $50 gift card to the local mall to say thank you for saving their kids from a fiery inferno of death. And the babysitter got fired. About 2 years ago, I used to work part-time at a popular pizza chain as a delivery driver. I had a full-time job during the days, so the shift at the pizza place would be from 6 p.m. to midnight. I enjoyed the job for the fact that I made good money and it was easy, but I hated working at night because it was dangerous. One night, we got a call 30 minutes before closing for a delivery in the worst part of town. I was stuck taking the order since my manager sent the other driver home early because it was a slow night. I hurriedly headed out to deliver the pizza, and about 20 minutes later my GPS said I'd arrived. I couldn't read the house number as it was pitch dark and no one in the house had their porch light on. As safety, I called the customer to ask if they could turn on their light, but he didn't answer until the 6th ring. He tells me his house has 2 trash bins next to the curb and that the light is broken so he can't turn it on. I started walking through the front yard to the front door when I see a man staring at me through the window. I yell out hello, but get no reaction. He doesn't even move to open the door. I'm getting goosebumps now, and I decide to turn around and go back to my car. I call the customer again to get the pizza from my car, and he tells me in a slow, creepy voice to ignore his roommate. He said the door is unlocked if I could take the pieces to the basement because he rents the bottom floor. As I'm on the phone, I could make out the small light from the window. The man that was staring at me earlier was on the phone talking to me. I hung up and took off. By the time I got back to the restaurant, the phones were turned over. Any complaints would have to wait till the next day. I'm not delivering to any basements and I'm taking your pizza home for dinner. Let's not meet again. I was 14 when this happened. My mum was going to work and she told me to wait for the guy to deliver groceries. It's usually a middle-aged guy called John. Well, I've known him for years now. I just had to get the groceries on the table and put the meat in the fridge. Well, this time John's cousin came, and I immediately had some bad vibes. He came rarely and only when my mum was there, but I thought it was no big deal. As soon as he saw me and not my mother, even before saying hi, he goes, "Are you home alone?" I hesitated a bit, and then said that I wasn't and that my mum was cleaning the dishes. He then did a weird expression in his face like a grin. "Are you sure?" At this point I was creeped out. I told him to just give me the groceries, to which he responded, "I can bring these in, don't worry." And as he started moving inside, I was scared to say the least and tried to stop him. "Got a problem, dude?" he said, angered. "Yeah, I do. I never told you to come in." I picked up the groceries and shut the door. He looked furious, but I didn't give him time to reply. After that, I never saw him again. Apparently, the worst part is that all of John's cousins are dead. So I don't really know who that dude was, but I don't want to. I'm glad I didn't let him in. I delivered pizza during 10 years of college, not a doctor. I delivered 4 large pizzas to an apartment complex. The person that ordered gave us the door code, so we would just enter the building. I had never delivered to this address before, so I just walked up the door and knocked as per usual. I just heard a muffled voice from inside the apartment say, "Come in, door's unlocked." Normally I would never go into someone's house, but it sounded like an old lady, so I entered. What I found inside was equal parts shocking and sad. The woman was laying back in a recliner in the living room. It looked like her body had fused with the fabric due to not moving for days at a time. If it wasn't apparent to me by the piles of empty soda bottles, takeout containers, and pizza boxes that this woman was probably unable to get out of a recliner. The acrid smell that hit your face would have made it obvious. She had me place the boxes of pizza on the armrest of the recliner. She also said that she had never seen me before, and it was usually one of the other drivers that delivered her food. I was new to that store, so I had no idea what to expect there. She signed the card receipt, and before I left I asked if there's anything else I could do to help. And she said that she dropped her phone after she made the call and asked if I could get it for her. I picked it up out of some nearby trash and handed it to her. As I left, I understood why she gave us the door code, because there was no way she was gonna get up to buzz me in. Here's another one I still remember from 10 years ago. There's an elderly woman that ordered 4 medium pizzas and 5 or 6 2-liter Pepsis every Friday. All the drivers fought over her order because she always tipped at least $5 to $10 and was super close to the store. She wasn't overweight or anything, so at best we figured she was an old lady who just didn't want to lug all that soda home from the store, which is fairly common for older folk to order a bunch of pizza at once and just eat it over a few days. One day I show up with all the food, and she had a distressed look on her face. She said, "I hate to trouble you, but can you come in for a second?" As I mentioned before, we really weren't supposed to go into people's homes, but she was familiar and super old. She continued, "My husband, he's on the floor." Holy hell. I didn't even know her husband was alive. I'd never seen him before and had delivered at least 15 times. My heart started racing. Am I gonna see a dead body right now? "Okay, sure," I say, as I walk inside. Just to the left of the entryway there was an elderly man slumped over in front of an automatic lifting recliner. She proceeds to say, "My husband slipped out his chair trying to get up and fell onto the floor. Can you help him move back on the chair?" At that moment I sort of saw him shift, like I knew he wasn't gone, and a wave of relief washed over me. But at the same time I was thinking to myself, how the hell am I going to get him on the chair? I could tell he was a stout guy at one point, but withered due to age. I sort of squatted down and pushed his back forwards so I could get behind him. I put my arm under his armpits and joined my hands at his chest. The sound, damn. As I began to lift, he started gasping and wheezing, like I was literally squeezing the soul from his body. I hesitated at first for fear of injury, but realized there was no way I was going to lift him any other way. So I just heaved and got him back onto his chair. I asked if the man was okay and he just looked at me. The woman paid and tipped me $15 before I headed to the door. As I was about to exit, the old man said, "Whoever said those are your golden years is full of crap." That was literally the only thing the guy said. I sat in my car for a minute, just sort of bewildered at what happened, and I felt so bad and was still concerned. I had their phone number on the receipt, so I called them on the way back to the store and asked the woman if he would be okay, and if I needed to call an ambulance. She said, "Oh no, honey, he'll be alright." And that was it. Those were probably the most memorable, but delivering pizza in a college town kinda gets crazy with the hijinks. Once, I auctioned off someone else's pizza to a crowd of drunks at a bar close outside their apartment complex I was delivering to. I just told my manager the person came up and said they ordered it. I paid for the pizza and pocketed the other $30. I used to deliver to a guy's house. Nice place, a wall of 20+ foot trees to hide the house, and 2 Mercedes in the driveway. Always a good tipper. His house got raided by the feds and they took all his stuff, plus pounds of weed. And somehow he continued to order like clockwork every week. No idea how he didn't go to jail. Weird side note, this guy would always answer the door stinking like weed even after the arrest. And he has these weird female mannequins with designer clothes on them all over the house. Like when you pull up, it looks like he's having a party. But it's actually just Home Alone deja vu and there are weird mannequins everywhere. Other than that, it's just your typical rednecks, houses full of trash, and people clearly on heavy drugs. I've had a few weird encounters while delivering pizza. An extremely large man naked on his bed telling me to come in. I yelled that I wouldn't like to do that, and he replied, "Oh, it's a girl. Why'd they send a girl if we knew the situation there?" The second was I delivered to a trucker in his rig. He berated me for having a single nose piercing and colored hair because he had a son with all them piercings, and all he does is drugs now. Then the man texted me, "Can I ask you a silly question?" I had called him to find a specific rig for the delivery, you see, and I ignored him and blocked him, and he called the store manager asking for me specifically to return and bring him a specific sauce packet. My manager said no and had me stay in the store with the crew until it was time to leave. Who knows what he had planned for me. There used to be this one house that was always under construction in my neighborhood. No joke. For 6 to 7 years, this massive house was being renovated. The parents were incredibly wealthy, and by the time the house was done, it was stunning. I'd always worked or driven by this house, but never met the owners. And one day, as if some pizza angel had heard my delivery prayers, I was given to deliver at that house. I was excited because I figured I would get a tip from the wealthy owners. Wrong. I got a hot dog. I arrived and knocked on the door, and these 2 dudes, both juniors or seniors in high school, opened in their underwear. I was like, "That'll be $20.15. "Yeah, I've got your cash, it's inside," and they invited me in. Normally I don't enter the customers' homes, but I was really curious to see the inside. I walked in avoiding eye contact with these 2 guys and went into the kitchen. They had 3 or 4 exotic birds flying around their house, and the 2 gentlemen were cooking raw hot dogs in a saucepan. They said they had to finish the hot dogs before they could pay me. It was a slow day and I didn't mind waiting. They cook up a few hot dogs, pay me for the pizza, and then asked if I wanted to have a threesome. I was eating the hot dog and choked a little bit. I'm a guy and didn't know how to react. I said that I was good, but they insisted, and I started walking to the door, and they followed me, chanting, "Threesome, threesome." I booked it, burnt rubber out the driveway, and in hindsight, I think they were playing a prank on me, but it was still weird as hell. A co-worker and my friend got a delivery one night before he left, and our manager pulled him into the office and gave him a pair of latex gloves and instructed him to use them to put the money in an envelope. He was confused and didn't ask any questions. He says when he got to the house, there was an actual caution tape around the yard and a sign that said something like "Warning Infestation." He is somewhat of a germaphobe to begin with, So at that point, he really doesn't want to go up to the door, but he asks to deliver the pizza. The woman who answers the door is grotesque, covered in red splotches and potentially bites of some kind. He hands her the pizza, carefully takes the money with the envelope, and stuffs it in and sprints back to the car. He throws a fit when he got back to the store, and the manager felt so bad she put the house on the blacklist. He said he scrubbed his hands till they were red. Think it was bed bugs or scabies or something, but we'll never know. Prior to my freshman year of college, I was delivering pizzas for Pizza Hut in a decent suburb outside of Cleveland. I was the typical stoner/partier, easygoing delivery guy. As a little background, one afternoon my manager requested I go change several $100s for smaller bills for our register. As I'm leaving the bank after getting the change and getting into my car, I sense someone approach from behind and suspect they're going to ask me for a cigarette. Nope. Instead, it's a dude with pantyhose on his head and a knife and demanding the money I have in my pocket and my keys. I oblige, and he ultimately runs off and tosses my keys in the parking lot where I can see them. When I run into the bank, no one at all saw the incident, and wouldn't you know, when they pull the footage, there is sun glare in the exact spot on the window where my car was parked. The cops interrogate me and search the car, but seem to conclude that in fact I was telling the truth. My manager even vouched for me, saying how I was a good kid. Fast forward 10 years and I'm telling the story at a party, and bam, it hits me. My manager, who often dates unsavory characters, set up the whole thing. Considering I was robbed in front of the bank in broad daylight on the busiest street in my town, who the hell would know to rob me, especially since I hadn't put my car topper on at this point. So while I was an undergrad, I worked as a pizza delivery driver. I had to deliver to a dodgy part of town with a delicious pie. When I got within a couple of miles of the residence, a local sheriff's deputy got in front of me. We made all the same turns, then as we got closer, another got in front of him and one behind me. I start freaking out a bit as I've been smoking some weed, but carry on. Finally, we get to the same residence, which is totally surrounded by police, in riot gear, guns drawn and all that stuff. I get out with my pizza and discover the house I'm supposed to deliver to is the one with SWAT out in front. One of the officers waves to me and says, "He's not gonna need that pizza today," as they proceed to breach the door, to which I return to the car with a free pizza and get the hell out of there. They were added to our do not deliver list, but I don't think we ever heard from them again. I drove for Domino's in college and had to deliver to a house in a bad part of town. There were no lights on outsides at all, and the grass looked like it hadn't been cut in months. I have to use my phone flashlight to find my way to the door. I knock, and this elderly woman answers wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt. She had one eye that was good and one that was completely glazed over. She never said a word and kept eye contact with me the entire time. She fumbled through her wallet and gave me the exact change. Meanwhile, inside, there's a very large man and a little kid. They were both only wearing boxers, and the kid kept trying to run up to help the woman with the sodas and pizza, and the guy kept yelling to sit his ass down. All the while, the woman is silent and staring into my soul. I wish I could say it was a one-time deal, but no. I delivered there a few more times after that, and it was the exact same drill every time. It just felt like something from the Twilight Zone. So the issue with calling CPS is that it honestly didn't cross my mind, because all I saw is what I stated. Neither the woman nor child had any sorts of cuts nor bruises or markings to show physical abuse. The woman's eye seemed like it had been that way for a while, and it didn't strike me as a possible abuse injury at the time. I was an exhausted college student with closing shift, and I was just trying to get in and out so that I could make more deliveries. This is one of the weirdest stories I had delivering pizza. Just after a hot girl quit, for whatever reason, I was given her regular shift. Late that shift at around 10:30, I went to deliver, and this old dude came out in a short bathrobe. The robe only went past his balls and his chest was open. Lucky for me. What his clothes didn't cover was his all-natural homegrown carpet. Dude was hairy. So anyway, he opens the door, does the cool guy pose with his arms up in the doorframe, looks over and goes, "Oh, you're not the hot chick." I then understood why she quit. Another story. Delivering to this absolute stunning beachfront home, the man answered the door completely nude and commented on how nice the view was. Another time, the dude asked me to put the food on the table while he got the money. The table had a massive bag of weed, scales, and a bunch of little bags. I was caught between doing what he asked and pretended I didn't see anything. Then I delivered to a house, and the topic of pay came up, and the people started a full-blown argument that ended with the pizza being thrown on the floor. One old guy eventually paid and apologized. They lost a big court battle today. Sad thing was, he paid by card, and this is back when that meant I had to call the store and read his card details, so it took forever. On another occasion, I parked outside the curb of a neighbor's house, and the old owner came out and told me that I could never do that again. For the record, this is a public road that I parked on. He didn't own it, so next time I went to that house, his curb was only a few spots for 100 meters either way. So I think, I'll be quick. The old dude literally used a laser pointer and aimed for my eyes as I was driving away with his revenge. What a creep. I delivered pizzas briefly for Little Caesar's Pizza in the very early noughties, being 19 or 20 at the time, and from the waspy suburbs, I had a lot to learn about how people on the other side of the tracks lived. I got a delivery to a particularly seedy flophouse motel. 2 of the $5 pepperoni pizzas that usually get paid for with $11, so not really worth delivering, but it was maybe 2 to 3 miles away and I could be back quickly, and I'd be able to get out of the store, so win-win. I pull up to the hotel and after a bit of wandering around I find the room the customer was in. A man of maybe 55 to 60 years answered the door with no shirt on, and his entire torso covered in a bandage that had an ominous-looking stain seeping through. He invited me into the room. I set the pizzas down, and as he was paying me, he told me that he had come to the city from some other state to have a medical procedure. After I get my $11 from the pizza, he asks me if I can help him change his pus-soaked bandages. "No thanks, sir. Have a good night." I delivered for Papa John's back in '93, and we had a big ice storm through the night. The manager calls me to see if I'd come in. I said I'd try, even though I lived further away than anyone else, and my car was a 5-speed manual as well. Not a soul on the roads. I get there and it's just him taking orders and making pizzas. It wasn't a lot since most people assumed everything was closed, and they were except us. I take a call from a dude that wasn't too far away, and he asked if I could stop to buy him a pack of cigs. I found a shop that was open and dropped his stuff off with no tip. Then we get a big order from CP and Telephone, now Verizon. Bunch of hills and stuff to get to the parking lot, and then I carried a huge stack of pizzas 100 yards across the icy parking lot. I hit the buzzer and waited for a bit while my arms were about to fall off, and they finally opened the door and gave me a check for the exact change. No tip after everything I went through. They always had free delivery, now hiring drivers up to 18 plus per hour on the sign outside. So I think people thought we made money from just delivering pizzas. We got minimum wage and used our own cars. When I was in my early 20s, I was very mentally unstable, lonely and desperate for friends. I've struggled with binge eating, and it was particularly bad at this time, with a lot of deliveries and late-night fast food binges. One night that I order pizza, this man delivers it. He's perhaps between his mid-30s and 40s, and I think I was about 20 at the time. We don't have any particularly engaging conversation. It was a normal friendly pizza delivery driver conversation. He may have complimented me on my piercings or hair at the time, but this was a decade ago. I do know that there was nothing that indicated I wanted to be friends, and that this was simply a customer-driven interaction. I think it was a day or so later that he adds me on Facebook. I want to emphasize that this was days later, meaning he took my information home or noted it somewhere. It took me a minute to figure out who he was, as I am autistic and had a hard time recognizing faces, especially putting faces to names, and realized he found me based off my order information. Being unstable, lonely, and desperate for friends, and also living by, I make decisions based on whether it will or will not make a good story, I accepted the friend request. He left some creepy, typical, over-sexual compliments on Facebook photos, but we never met or talked or anything ever again, and I think I deleted him a little while later. This delivery driver was almost twice my age at the time, and decided after less than 10 minutes interaction with me to find me on Facebook. I honestly hope to never meet him again, and I hope that no one else does either, or if you do, that they were smarter and in a better place than I am. I probably should have reported it to the company, but hindsight's 2020. I also want to note that I've had delivery drivers creepily try to flirt with me, and it's the worst. Please let me eat my greasy food in peace. I was a pizza delivery driver, and I had a regular that was saved in the computer as Mike from around the corner. Whenever I delivered, he was super messed up. On more than one occasion, I had to let myself in because he was playing his drum set with his headphones on, completely on booze and drugs. One time he was passed out and drooling on the coffee table. I called the cops, but he was okay. I saw him a year later at his day job and he didn't even know who I was. He was never sober when I delivered. I work as a delivery driver. This happened last Thursday, and for the sake of what will eventually become time-sensitive context, we have to wear a mask at work currently due to the pandemic. I was making a stop and doing my usual drops. It was nothing unusual at all. Pulling the second-to-last set of rotors out of the truck and carrying them to the open bay to set them. A customer of the place I was delivering to walked out of the side door and almost directly into me. A quick stop and turn on my heels with a laugh and "oops, pardon me," and I had made it around them and into the bay without making eye contact. I turn around and see this, at my guess, late 30s brown-haired woman staring at me like I had just insulted her very existence. "Why are you wearing that?" she demanded, pointing at her mouth. I raised an eyebrow but decided I wasn't getting involved with whatever this attitude was. One of the mechanics is now also giving a 1,000-yard stare at this woman like she's lost her mind. I walk on by since she's not in my way and grab the last set of rotors, and she is now death glaring at me. "It's rude to ignore people," she barked. "While dealing with this isn't part of my job," I remarked to my amusement. Our vehicles are unmarked and I wear regular clothes to work so I can trash talk my own reputation without reflecting my work. Karen was not done going crazy yet, however. "Are you sick? Why are you out here if you're sick? You shouldn't be delivering anything." At this point I had delivered everything and was shutting the back door. "No wonder they don't let you into the shop if you infect everyone." Sure I would. Have a nice day." "You're as sick as it gets." Insert some language here that I've never heard before, and insert another 3 lines of it as I start the truck. She has now crossed the street to a van I believe is hers, and is still hand-speaking as she yells, "It's not a joke getting people sick, it isn't funny, what's wrong with you?" I'd had enough to deal with the job, so I simply waved and pull away. I've run into worse, but never someone who's offended to be apologized to, and what made this so strange is the topic. She was screaming at me about getting sick, but at no point from the movement she nearly ran into me to the moment she went to her van did she avoid or move away from me in any way. and the entire time she was glaring at me like the mere fact someone else was anywhere near her was an insult to her very existence. Last but not least, someone so worried about getting sick, then why was she not wearing a mask? Hey guys, it's Mort here and thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video, and honestly, if you don't want pizza after listening to the end of this, well, I'd be quite surprised because I certainly do. Please be honest in the comments, how many of you have ordered or are going to get pizza now that you've heard the stories? Just say, I'm getting a pizza right now or something. I am legitimately really interested. Be honest, there's no shame. I even want one this very moment, but probably won't get one. In any case, if you liked it, please let me know. And as always, a huge thanks to my wonderful patrons that help keep the channel going with their continued support. The link to Patreon's in the description if you would like to be a contributor and have your name on screen, as well as some funky other perks. Alright then guys, I think I'm gonna leave the video here and dream about pizza while editing. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.